Howdy, welcome to the White Guy Show. I'm Whitey, and I've been down with COVID for 2 weeks, and I ended up watching a parts of a movie that I wouldn't have ever otherwise watch because I was too sick to leave this situation basically, and physically couldn't get out of this one. And the movie was called Horton Hears a Who, and it's a pretty ridiculous film. It comes from a Dr. Seuss book I have never read. I've never been a Dr. Seuss guy. Obviously, The Cat in the Hat, you can't have not come across it in elementary school at some point. But Horton Hears a Who, it came out in 2008. I'm trying to get. The internet here sucks. It's Christmas morning. I doubt I'm going to get good internet. But the premise here is that Horton is an elephant that it lives in the jungle. I don't recall if they're any more specific than that, just the jungle with other critters, and it's one of these Disney movie type things. I don't know if it was Disney, but I don't know what was on the book and what different characters they added in. Well, Horton is almost like a school teacher in a way. He's got this little gaggle of different critters that follow him around, and he kind of like teaches them stuff. But I don't know if it's all BS or not. I have no clue. I think that was a theme in there too. But and then there's a kangaroo, a mama kangaroo with a little kangaroo cub, and she's like, who is she like? She's like the uptight school marm, or the preacher lady who's like, you shouldn't do that, you kids. Don't play too loud. Don't climb that tree. You'll hurt your leg. You'll shoot your eye out, kid. One of those. Only she's like mean about it. Like nasty. I didn't like this character immediately. I was like, Horton, you're like a 900-pound elephant. Just beat the shit. Just harm this person. Harm her bad. She deserves it. You shouldn't hit a woman. She's a kangaroo. Anyway, and so Horton's going about his day after you kind of, in the first act, you establish what that is, and then a little speck of something happens to float by, and I don't know why I keep going East Coast. Floating by is this little speck, and he hears someone crying for help, and then in his imagination he freaks out that someone needs help, and is like desperately holding on to this speck like somebody clinging to a meteor. So he ends up chasing after this speck, plowing through the jungle, knocking over things, trying to avoid hurting people. Was doing it, all kinds of mayhem. And then at some point, the speck lands like on a little. They kept calling it a clover, but it's like a little flower. Um, but a lot of this stuff is animated like the old Dr. Seuss. Not only the characters, but the plant life. So it's something like that. It's like what the trees look like in the Dr. Seuss, only like a clover size. So Horton periodically can hear someone speaking that someone sometimes can hear him. You go to the little speck, and there's a little town on that speck, like Whoville, and it's got a mayor called somebody I forget. I forget all their names outside of Horton, and so it's the mayor is like one of the Dr. Seuss characters, and Horton is voiced by Jim Carrey, and I want to say the mayor is voiced by Steve Carell. I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. Yes, the mayor is voiced by Steve Carell. The kangaroo is voiced by Carol Burnett. I'm glad I got that now, 'cause that was frustrating me. Somebody called Vlad is voiced by Will Arnett. Seth Rogen voices Morton, one of the little mouse creatures in the film. Dan Fogler voices someone called the councilman. We'll get to all this in a second. Isla Fisheye areas. Jonah Hill voices Tommy. Amy Poehler is in this. Jamie Presley, Charles Osgood is the narrator. So you got a lot of cast in here, a lot of voice talent, some popular people. But so there's the mayor with 96 girls, a wife, and but he's a very goody two shoes, very concerned about what everybody thinks of him. Doesn't have a real spinal cord, and nothing bad ever happens in this town. Now this is for little kids, so you gotta try with all your mental capacity to ignore the massive logic flaws in everything that happens, because it's like at one point within the logic of the town. So you have the jungle where you have Horton, the elephant, and the kangaroo, and all the critters. And then on this little speck, you have the town. And they're like, and nothing ever happens in the town. Like nothing bad ever happens. There's never an emergency. And it's like you're on a speck floating through air, being pushed around by the wind. It had to come from somewhere. So you got dislodged from somewhere. You're floating through, being pushed by the wind through the air. Then you land on this flower, and Horton's got to get you somewhere safe. And it's like, how did that not? So it's like once Horton gets involved, eventually the townspeople become aware that every so often there's a rumbling. And then at some point, I forget exactly how they do this, but because of like the plumbing, like Horton's yelling at this speck, but somehow only the mayor can hear this voice that's coming from the sky. So there becomes this whole God allegory. It's like only the mayor can hear God, and no everybody else. You have to have faith. Only I can hear Horton, but he tells us we're in danger, and he needs us to get to somewhere safe. And so we need to. At one point, he's like, "You need to evacuate the town." And it's like, to where? You're on a spec. Like where? So it's made for kids, which is disturbing, because I'm torn on the message, because on the one hand there's a anti-conformist message in here, which is good, because the kangaroo lady is such a just she's a cunt. She's such a that she gets the whole jungle up against Horton, and nothing ever really gets explained. It's like he thinks there's a voice on that speck, and of course there's not a voice on the speck. So the critters of the jungle don't trust Horton, think he's nuts, because there's nothing on that speck. And then the mayor is the only one who can hear Horton somehow. But again, ignore the illogic of that. But so they're both like prophets of each other. Nobody else believes they're there but them. And then so the kangaroo gets everybody to like mob up and attack Horton. And it's like, why? Like if you came to me and like there's a guy who thinks there's people on that speck, I'd be like, I don't give a shit. I'd go about my day. Like, why would you ever become upset? But again, it's a religious allegory, which is it's just annoying. It's like I'm sure the book made some valid points and used talking elephants and talking kangaroos in the jungle, to compare politics and all that groupthink and mob mentality. But it's like so you have to take serious political and religious material as subject matter and make it kid friendly. But it's like, if you got to do that, should this be for the kids? So it's like, I get the hate people because they have different beliefs. That's a bad thing. Okay, that's a good story. That's a good point to make. But it's like, I think it got a little too. You're going for the young kids with religious discussions, which is what this is. So it's like, is this for the, if you got to, take it to this extent for the kids, should you even be having this conversation with the kids? Why can't society just let the kids be kids and just let them have fun being kids? And then when they start growing pubes and they're angry and they're agitated because they're not getting laid and they're already upset anyway, now hit them with this shit because they're old enough and they're ready for it. Well, why do you even make this stuff? So I don't recall what it was all about, but Dr. Seuss went to court at one point, if I remember this correctly, or maybe that was another guy. But it's like this is it. It never felt right. It felt that you're taking these discussions of religion is basically what it is, and pushing it on the kids who aren't gonna understand what you're discussing. So it feels like brainwashing is my point, and it made me very uncomfortable. And I'm gonna then be honest with you to the point where I shouldn't. There's too many Jews in the cast, which is almost everybody here, for this not to feel like Jewish brainwashing. And I don't know if is Dr. Seuss Jewish. Probably, but it's the usual suspects of Hollywood anti-white, anti-America brainwashing. I'm just like, it felt uncomfortable the whole time. It's like, so on the upside, there's a anti-mob mentality lesson, which is good. And just because somebody sees something differently than you do, doesn't mean you should castigate them and hate them and treat them like crap and all that stuff or form a mob, because they Horton and the mayor end up in parallel situations in their own communities because everybody's ultimately out to get them, and it's not just nobody believes them, and that puts the people on the spec in danger. So it's very much a Noah's Ark situation. Nobody believes that danger is coming, and even when there's telltale signs, they dilute it away. It's like, no, everything's fine. I don't feel those rumblings at all. Or what was Mount Vesuvius? What was the name of that town? But that ended up covered in ash. Um, so it's like that. If we don't do something, danger's on the way, but it's not immediately evident. That danger's on the way. So a lot of allegory. Now I'm gonna read this because I'm not 100% over the coof enough to multitask it all. So, Vesuvius, come on, what was the name of the town? Pompeii, Jeepers Creepers. I should have had to look that up. Pompeii. So it's like Pompeii. You feel the rumblings of a volcano, but instead of acknowledging that danger, and then there's this real cheap throw in about there's some 100-year anniversary or 200-year anniversary of Whoville, the little town on the spec, and who wants, everybody wants that to be happy. So, the city councilman, chief, I'd imagine the senior or chief city council member is like, the mayor's nuts. He's talking to some guy who we can't hear. He's crazy and all this stuff. So, let's just ignore it, even though periodically there's, rumblings like Mount Vesuvius situation. So, in the jungle, Horton's rushing through the jungle, and at some point, a vulture's trying to kill him or get the speck, and then does. And then the vulture drops the speck, which is on the flower, into a whole valley, I guess, or I don't know, field of the same kind of flowers, same species of flower. So Horton spends forever going through there, and it's all sad. Because he can't find it, and he's desperate to what happened to the mayor. And it's like, you met him this morning. It's like, I would feel bad too if I was worried that they were in danger, but And are they going to be okay? And I guess they became friends. But it's just I don't know if that it was. It couldn't have all been in the book, but so they had to take the book, which Dr. Seuss books, not very thick reading, and expand it to an hour and a half long length, which it felt like it was longer than that. To make it work, so it just became one ordeal after the next, to stretch it out. And it was like, by which point, even if you like, I was involved at one point. I was like, I could, on the one hand, I could give a shit, but I do want to know what happens because I hadn't never read the book. So credit to the film there. You do kind of get invested just to, okay, how does it end? Oh, Horton the Elephant. I want to find out who played the vulture in the film. But because I think it was my guy Jerry. Sorry, I'm trying to get oxygen. I'm still my lung capacity ain't all back, so I'm trying to get some air in. So I might have to wrap this up real quick because I don't have enough oxygen for sitting here and talking. I don't know how I'm gonna go back to work tomorrow. I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I don't know. I don't think I can make it. I'm really starting to sweat that one, and just in general. Who the hell played the thing? So so Will Arnett played Vladikov, a savage and scary Russian accented vulture hired by the sour kangaroo to steal Horton's flower. So the kangaroo hires a vulture to get the flower away from Horton. I guarantee you they put that in there to stretch it out. Which just to me made it more annoying. It was just like, oh my gosh. So Horton has the flower with the speck, with the town, with the mayor in it, and all the people. And he's trying to get it to the top of this mountain, get it somewhere safe, won't get like crushed or something. Putting it in way more danger than it probably ever was if he just left it alone. But there's an hour and a half of him scrambling through the jungle, running into obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, trying to get it safe. Eventually, he does. Everybody wins, and then even the kangaroo, the people realize that there are people on its back and all this stuff, and you profit for Jesus correct the whole time. Believe in Jesus or something. I don't know. Whatever fill in the blank religion. I just, I'm torn. I just felt too propaganda-y. That's how I felt. It didn't feel like an innocent message. Again, you know, tolerate people who are different from you. Just because they have a different belief system doesn't mean you form a mob and attack them and hate them and try to kill them, which is what they're trying to do to Horton and possibly the mayor. But I agree with that. That's a good message, but it just felt too heavy-handed. And then as a film, it just stretched on for too long. Like it just kept one thing after the next after the next. It's like eventually it's like just get there. Like you had a good enough premise to start with. It's a kids movie. I'll be 40 in May. I'm not 6 or 7. Maybe the 6 to 8 or 10-year-old kids loved this, but I was just like, just elephant. Like pick a spot. Like where is better than the other for this spec? Just pick a spot. Stop where you are. Think for a second, and then just pick a spot to put this flower and give it its best chance of not getting destroyed. There's nowhere safe for this thing. Just pick a spot. So I don't know. It got pretty dumb. So that's my thoughts. Horton the elephant who hears a who. I think it was just Horton hears a who. I didn't care for it. Um, and Jim Carrey. I get why they selected Jim Carrey. He plays the mayor. No, he plays the elephant. and Steve Carell plays the mayor. I just felt Jim Carrey was lacking some of the typical Jim Carrey energy. Now, granted, it's probably going on in his 60s, but they needed that mid 90s Jim Carrey energy that he just doesn't have anymore. Plain and simple, if you've seen his last few projects, he just, he's getting old. He doesn't have that same pep, and it was lacking. This movie needed that mania from him and that character. So you got some of the compassion that he's capable of, and the good voice work, standard issue voice work he's capable of, but it lacked the super high energy. He just doesn't have that anymore. Which isn't a criticism coming from me. He's old. He's getting old. What it is, but this film needed that and didn't have it. So what happened to my water? Did I put that somewhere? Oh, it's over there on the Nintendos. I put my water on the Nintendos and I forgot I put it over there. Okay, the water's on the Nintendos, kids. So that's my rant about Horton Here's a Who. If you're an 8 to 10-year-old kid, it was probably great. I don't know. If you're a parent, you kids could watch this. I think to me it felt propaganda-y, and I don't know. It made it over complicated, and it kept using the elephant falls down, go boom to replace story because they ran out of story. It would work better as a half-hour episode of a TV series than an hour and a half long, 2 hour long movie. So that's it for me. Thanks for watching. Cheers.